played at a high level, know their coaches down there, know the conference that he plays in. So very, very excited. And secondly, then we stood pat there at 67, and got Romeo's brother, so that was good. Um, Outside linebacker, pass rusher, highly athletic kid, long, violent. Had an injury this year that he's recovered from, so we feel great with that recovery. And then really expect him to do great things with his brother. It's pretty cool when I called him. Romeo was standing right next to him, so I would say the excitement in that room was at a high level with the Aquara family. So it was great. And then we made the trade with Indy. We moved up from 85 to 75, took Jordan Jackson, who we had at the Senior Bowl. Guard transfer from Rutgers, really tough guy, strong, athletic, smart, nasty. I mean, any O-line trait that you put in the scouting manual, this guy has it. Really a guy that kind of we targeted dating back before the Senior Bowl. We were very lucky. I was, not lucky to be in the Senior Bowl. Let me rephrase that. But we were lucky to have Jonah on our team and get to know him a little bit better. So the comfort level was great. So, and then we're sitting there tomorrow at 109, and I think we have 4 picks tomorrow total. So with that, I'll open it up.
Okay, we'll go with Dave Burkett.
Hey, Bob, just I know you got obviously some work to still do tomorrow, but just curious, how many of these first few draft picks do you see as being starters or big time contributors for you in the fall, and just how big of a how important was that for you to fill some of those holes and have these guys be contributors right away?
Yeah, you always want your first 2 days of draft to be contributors, early in their career. So, that's the goal. They're going to come in, they're going to be on the roster, they're going to play, they're going to develop, and they're going to hopefully help us win games. That's the role. But it's up to them now. They're here, so they got to work extremely hard from wherever they're going to be for the next month to 6 weeks or whatever it is, and get their minds right and get into the playbook. And so when they get back here, whenever they can, they're going to hit the ground running. So our expectations are high for these guys, but they're rookies, so they're going to need a little bit of development. But we feel really strong that these guys we added today, as well as Jeff yesterday, that they're going to be helping us on the field next year.
Stoney?
Yeah, Bob, can you shed any light on, there was video of Bill O'Brien getting ticked off, and it was reported that it was you guys had a deal and then you guys backed out and he got all upset. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, no, we talk to a lot of teams. That's when we're not on the clock. We talk to a bunch of teams, and it's not just myself. We got 4 or 5 people that make calls, so I'm not sure what that was about, but we didn't have a trade.
Justin Rogers?
Hey, Bob, as you were doing your own internal mock drafts, I guess how surprised were you that Swift was available, and what set him apart from that tight group of running backs with Taylor, Dobbins, Akers? There was a lot of guys kind of seemingly similarly graded.
Yeah, it was a tight group up there for sure. A lot of guys we liked in that cluster up there, and I'd say a little bit surprised last night when we went back and we said, all right, well, Swift's still up there. Kind of crossed our fingers for a couple picks, but felt going to bed last night. He was the guy that was on my mind the most, so I was hoping that we could get him, and we stood pat there. And you never know. It's hard. The draft is hard to predict, as you guys know. But I felt very fortunate that he was there.
And how does he complement Carry-On?
Yeah, different kind of back. A little bit shorter, a little bit thicker. Runs lower to the ground. This guy's really good in the open field. Makes guys miss in space. Big playability. Catches the ball well out of the backfield. Good route runner. Different. I think they complement each other very well.
Okay, Michael Rothstein?
Yeah, Bob, kind of following a little bit on that, is there something about SEC backs that is attractive to you? Because in theory, your top 3 backs are all from the SEC.
No, I mean nothing special, Mike. Good question. I think obviously the SEC. I would argue it's one of the top, one or two conferences in college football. I think a lot of people say it is the best conference with the competition that's in that conference. From LSU to Alabama to Auburn to Georgia to all those schools. And some of the other teams have really really good players. So the level of competition, they get the high recruits. They really do. And in DeAndre's case, he sat behind a first round pick in Sony and a high second round pick in Chubb from a couple of years ago. So you go back and watch him early. He kind of was the complement back, and he went in there and made plays as a couple of years ago, and then really last year kind of played more. And I think every step along the way he's improved. So hopefully he can take another step when he gets here.
And how much of this pick was maybe insurance that Carry-On hasn't been able to stay healthy?
Well, I think we always want a stable of backs. I think I've said that for a long time that, you can count on one hand how many backs kind of carry the load. Like there's not a lot of those guys walking around. So, I think we always need multiple backs. It's a position where guys get hit, they take a pounding. So we just got to make sure we have good depth and guys that can go out there and make plays for us.
Kyle Mikey.
Yeah, Bob, I'm curious on Jonah. What kind of style as a guard? What does he bring to the table? How does he maybe compare or contrast to what you've had that spot with Graham?
Yeah, pretty similar, I would say. Both nasty guys. That was one of Graham's calling cards, right? He's a nasty player. He's a finisher. I would put Jonah in that same category. A little bit of different story. Jonah was a grad transfer that played at Rutgers at a very high level, and then wanted to go and play against the best. So that kind of told me something when we, talked to this kid, and why'd you want to play another year? He could have came out last year. He wanted to play against the best competition. So that says something. And he went there and fit in immediately. Obviously, I told you guys last night we spent a lot of time with the Ohio State staff and guys that have coached there the last couple of years, and to just walk into Ohio State and first day on campus, first workout, first month on the team, and had a high level of respect from everybody in the organization in the university. Showed us that he's a guy that's has leadership ability, he has toughness, and he has drive to play against the best.
And you made the trade up for him. Were you concerned with somebody behind you that he was a target?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there wasn't a lot of offensive linemen in that the interior offensive linemen. There was a few teams, nobody specifically. We wanted the player, and I thought the price was fair. We gave up a fifth, but then we flopped back a little bit in the sixth round. So to us it was a fair trade for a guy that we really liked.
Chris Burke.
Hey, Bob. Got just a couple of quick ones about sort of the process of this draft and this offseason. Just how was it making a trade sort of in the heat of things with everything connected like that? And then with Julian, knowing that rookies probably aren't going to have as much time in camp, what does it do for you to have a guy with him, with Romeo, that can kind of walk him through it?
Yeah, I think, I'm not putting the cart before the horse here, but I believe since they're relatives, they can probably live together. So maybe he gets a helping hand with the playbook. But we'll see. He's a smart kid anyways. He knows football. So, but it's obviously helpful, right? It's obviously to have someone that's been in the system for a couple of years at your disposal, and obviously wants his brother to do well. I think it's an added bonus that the comfort level was really high. And he's got a tremendous skill set. So let's talk about his skill set first. That's why we picked him. And he just happens to be Romeo's brother. So that's an added bonus for us.
Dave Burkett.
I think Chris had one other one, maybe that.
Yeah, just real quick, what was it like, making the trade from home? Was it different than it would have been in other years, trying to put all those pieces together out while you're, while team's on the clock or whenever that went down? Yeah,
I mean, there's just a few extra steps, because we're in a video conference with my staff. Like I told you before, there's 8 or 10 of us in the room at any time. So, we split up the calls. I can't make every call. If we're trying to go up the draft board, we kind of split them up and say, listen, all right, you take this team, I take that team, Joe, you take this team, and so on and so on. So there's probably 4 or 5 people making calls. And the communication has to be clear, and then you have to be able to make a decision. And, ultimately, they made some initial calls. My staff did. Then I picked up the phone and called Chris Ballard, and, we got it done in a couple seconds. So it was pretty smooth process.
I just have 2 real quick ones just to follow up on the Bill O'Brien stuff. That wasn't you talking to Bill then, before their pick?
I had talked to Billy a couple times during the day. Like I talked to every team. We didn't have any conversations like that though. So no.
And then number 2, can you clarify how was Joe Dahl's health?
Joe's healthy. Yeah, Joe's healthy. Talked to Joe on the phone, like a couple weeks ago. He's doing well. So he's doing. If we had an off-season program, he'd be a full participant.
Thank you.
Okay, we got Jen Hammond.
Hey, Bob, I was just curious. It seems like when they talk about a lot of the 4 guys that you picked up between yesterday and today, one of the words that keeps on coming up is leadership, and guys are leaders. And I know they're rookies and they're not going to come in and become a voice in the room, but how critical or how important, how much of an emphasis was there for you to get guys specifically with leadership qualities?
That's always part of the equation, right? It's always something we look at, but I think we have great leadership on the team right now, and I think the guys that we added this weekend so far add to that for sure. So it's something that we take a lot of time. It's a lot of tape work, studying the player, right? The evaluation of the skill set is number one, right? Can they help us on the field? And then a lot of the research stuff is how they fit in the locker room. How do they lead? How do they carry themselves? We put our emphasis on that. We always will. And I think the guys we took in the first 4 guys fit that mold. And I think we have a good core of that heading into it. So these guys will help build that.
Okay, last 3 questions will be Justin Rogers, Michael Rothstein, and Michael Stetz.
Hey, Bob, one of the universal things said about this draft class was the depth of the wide receiver group. And with that, people thought maybe talent would kind of fall down the board, maybe value compared to previous years. As you look at what's left out there, are you seeing value at the receiver position still out there?
Yeah, there's some receivers that we like for sure. I think a lot of receivers. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I know a lot of receivers went off the board today. So there are other guys that are in the mix that we would consider here in the next couple rounds. There's guys that we like later too that we just know from our research that will be there. So I think there's probably a guy in every round that we would feel comfortable with. It just kind of be comparing that guy against the across the board at other positions.
Rothstein?
Yeah, this is maybe more of a clerical thing, but while it's on my mind, have you made a decision on Jared Davis's 5th-year option yet?
I have not.
Last question, Stetz.
Bob, after the first 2 days of the draft, going into day 3, what position groups stand out to you as far as having the most amount of top players still available?
Maybe I should just screen share my depth chart my draft board for you guys. I don't know. I don't really want to answer that. I don't want to give away any state secrets here, but I think there's a number of positions that have depth that we like. So we're gonna, we met tonight. That's why I was a little bit late getting on this call. We met for about 20, 30 minutes after the draft was over to kind of, get some initial thoughts on that. We'll get on the call again tomorrow morning around 8:30 or 9 and kind of reset it a little bit and take a harder look at, which way we want to go.
Can you explain a little of that process of how you reset, how you meet up with the scouts and kind of how you set everything up for tomorrow?
Sure. Yeah. So, obviously just like the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts of it, the board gets wiped out of the top, right? So now we're working off a virtual board. So, the computer guys and, Mike Disner and John Dykema and Ron Miles, those guys are kind of in charge of what the board looks like. So they'll manipulate it. They'll use their Excel and Access and all these great databases and push all those guys up to the top just so it's a little bit easier to see with the corresponding grades to the left and right. So it's just a little bit easier to read. and then we'll get a fresh look at that in the morning because everything obviously right now at the top of the board is wiped out. So you just gotta kind of reset it, reorganize, what the needs are and compared to what the best available is, and that's what we always do. But we feel good with what we came out with today, and look forward to tomorrow.
Thanks, Bob.
All right,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, guys.